Chapter 8 Gorokoth Lamhair, Leifir's Transformation. Klasbul's long night was finally receding into the dawn. Wow, Jinto mused as he approached the cave. How long's it been since I've had somebody to wait for me at home? Was she being good and waiting there for him? He'd only been gone for around 3 hours, after all. Plus, the enemy seemed busy laying their hands on people who'd made the dire mistake of choosing to dye their hair blue, so she was probably fine. Or so he was telling himself to tamp down his anxiety. Leifir, I'm back. He didn't want a gun aimed at him again. There was no change to the entrance of the cave. No traces of blood adorned the trap, so he knew no animals taller than knee-height in stature had trespassed. Jinto carefully rewound the carbon crystal fiber onto the spindle. Leifir. No response. His anxiety creeping back, Jinto took the CompuWatch out of his pocket, equipped it, switched on its flashlight, and went to the cave's far end. There she was, breathing lightly as she dozed. Her face's profile looked so much like a young child's it was frankly astounding. Jinto sighed with relief. Leifir, wake up. He shook her shoulders. The royal princess's eyes reeled open, and suddenly she drove Jinto back and reached for her phaser. It's me. It's me. Jinto stroked his backside. Oh, so it is. Leifir relaxed. You scared me. And that's my fault how, said Jinto. I called for you 1,000,000 times, and you weren't waking up. Honestly, I doubt the trap would have alerted you anyway at this rate. Shut up, Jinto, she said, shutting him down. She narrowed her eyes. What are those tacky clothes supposed to be? Oh, this old thing? Jinto looked down at the jumpsuit he'd donned. How many colors were plastered over it? The 3 primaries went without saying, and joining them in the madness were indigo, pea green, pink, reddish-brown, tan. There were roughly 20 shades in all. The clerk at the boutique had assured him the color scheme looked dapper on him. I think you're gonna have to get used to colorful. I refuse, she stated bluntly. Okay, you don't have to get used to it, but I do need you to tough it out, Jinto compromised. Forbearance is necessary in life, she agreed reluctantly. Jinto sat down, opened the duffel bag he'd acquired in town, and took out a can. What's that? Asked Leifir, peering. Hair dye. Hair dye? Yep. Gotta do something about your blue hair, don't you think? Jinto read the label. Oh, good. It says just spill it on your hair. You mean to dye my hair, she said, eyes widening. Duh. Did you think I felt the urge to dye my hair? I bought some for you in black. Thought you'd probably like black the most. I refuse. Leifir covered her hair with her arms and shrank back. Come on. Jinto was not expecting this. So you don't like black then? Maybe I should have picked red or yellow. I don't dislike black. I like my hair the color it is. It's an exquisite shade. Not too dark, not too light. Leifir was ready to launch into a fervent diatribe. Gotcha, gotcha. I think it's really pretty, too, Jinto consoled her. Thing is, over in the city, they're rounding up people who've dyed their hair blue. My hair isn't dyed. Yeah, and why's that? Think about it. Once they see that it's not dyed, I dare say it'd turn even worse for us. Kulin mapas tang kip. You oughta wash your mouth out. Not that I have any idea what you said. I suppose I have no other choice, she said, dejected. Jinto had lost his patience, though. Man, UFs are real hard to understand. You're fine with genetic modification, so what's so bad about a little cosmetic modification? How many times must I tell you, you two are a... I'm off? Yeah, well, it's hard to feel that way whenever stuff like this happens. Jinto shook the can. Oh, noblest Filartner, though it pains a lowly peon like me to impose upon you, couldst you offer your hair most beauteous upon me? Or do you want to do the damn thing yourself? Give it to me. I'd never let you lay a hand on my hair. Leifir practically wrested the can from his hands. Making no effort to read the label, Leifir attempted to take off the can's cap. You've got to take off your circlet first. I do. Of course. I'm trying to pass you off as a lander, Leifir. You ever met a lander wearing a circlet? Then it occurred to him. Oh yeah, I guess ovs don't really take em off very often. Is exposing your frosh in public embarrassing, or? You always think up such strange things, she said, seemingly impressed. Then it's not embarrassing? No. We simply don't take them off because doing so is inconvenient. Okay, good. Then I don't have to worry about it. Jinto's heart thumped a little. The Frosch spatiosensory organ was composed of over 100 million individual lenses. The closest point of comparison would be an insect's compound eye. In all honesty, the thought that Leifir's forehead was sporting an insect eye was less than appealing. However, when Leifir begrudgingly removed her circlet, he sighed with relief. It was diamond-shaped, with the luster and color of a lamb pearl. Depending on how much light was shed on it, it also at times resembled more of a ruby. The individual lenses were too small to see with the naked eye, so it looked more like a synthetic machine part or some eccentric finery. Far from unsettling, it was as though she'd pasted on a sliver of a gorgeous jewel. "Wow, it's super noticeable," said Jinto. "Don't tell me you want me to remove it too." Leifir's terror was plain to see. "I can't remove it. If you demand I gouge it out then." Whoa, no, that'd be way too cruel." Leifir sighed with relief. "What do you figure me for, a serial slasher?" Jinto fetched a hat from inside his duffel bag. "I bought you this. Try it on, would you?" Leifir tipped it on, shoving it down to her brow. Now her frosh was totally concealed, and her overly perfect facial features also slightly obscured from view. On the other hand, her pointy Avriel ears were jutting out of her hair for all to witness. "Your ears." She stuffed the tips of her lobes into her hat and hid them behind her hair. "Is this okay?" "I like it," Jinto grinned. "If I wear this hat, then surely dyeing my hair isn't necessary?" Leifir attempted in vain to stuff all of her hair into the hat. Jinto coolly smacked her with the truth. "Dye it. It'll always be peeking out. And if you want to cut it so that it's always totally concealed, then that'd be a haircut for the books. Is that what you'd prefer?" Leifir shuddered just imagining it. "Fine." She bit her lip and mustered some grim resolve. "If it must be done, then I shall do it." So dramatic. The people here dye their hair for fun, you know. Whatever happened to the Leifir who was all, "If things turn critical, I want you to take the navigation log and leave me." Are you that Leifir? Where did your penchant for self-sacrifice fly off to? Shut up, Jinto. I'll have you know I love my hair. I wasn't saying you have to dye it for the rest of your life. It's just for the time being, Leifir. The rest of my life? I couldn't stand it. Leifir took off the hat, and her long locks danced back down. The princess took her bluish-black hair and lovingly caressed it. Jinto was beset by a needless sense of guilt. "You'll meet your true hair again soon." "Right," Leifir nodded. She plopped a drop of hair dye on her head. Black proceeded to devour the bluer hints of her coif. Through some principle unbeknownst to them, the dye didn't touch the skin or fabric her hair touched, but continued to spread out thin across her whole head of hair. In less than a minute, the Av girl with the bluish-black hair had transformed into a girl with vivacious, yet totally black hair. The only thing standing in the way of being able to describe her as average was her peskily lovely face. "Looks great on you." "I'm in no mood for flattery," she said, but she was not so dissatisfied after all, grooming her black locks with her fingers. "All right, next up, your clothing." Jinto handed over the duffel bag, and with it its entire contents. "They're all in here. I'll be outside, so please change." "Sure." Upon taking the girl's clothing out of the bag, her brow furrowed. "These long robes are strangely shaped. Though they're better than I was imagining." Leifir's attire was striped blue and red, a very mild-mannered design here on Klasbühl. Jinto stood up. "Call me when you're finished changing." "Wait, Jinto." She opened up the duffel bag facing the floor. The only thing left inside was a pair of shoes. "There's no jumpsuit in here. Is it really all right for me to wear this long robe over my military uniform?" Jinto closed his eyes and took a deep breath. The time had come to slap her with yet another abominable truth bomb. "That's not a long robe," Jinto put it to her gently. "You wear it in place of your jumpsuit." "I meant to wear this over my undergarments." "'Fraid so. That's how they do it here." There were some women who wore this kind of clothing on my home planet, too. They call it a one-piece there. Don't know how to say it in Barnu. I don't care about that. Leifir regarded this, one piece, with suspicion and fear. Must I truly wear this?" "Yes," said Jinto patiently, "if you want to pass as a Klasbühlian." "You are a cruel, cruel man, Jinto." Jinto shook his head. Please understand, I'm not doing this because I want to. Is that so? Her suspicious gaze fell on him. Then why, exactly, have your cheeks been twitching this entire time? Once Leifier had changed clothes, Jinto declared he would be taking a short break, and soon he was snoozing. Meanwhile, Leifier kept watch in her new one piece, gun in hand. Jinto guessed he must have napped for 2 hours and change, because when he stretched out and cricked his neck, he felt refreshed. Let's get out of here. Yep, nodded Leifier, who was sitting by the cave entrance. There was something they needed to take care of before they could leave. They had to erase as much evidence of there being star forces as possible. Jinto dug a hole at the bottom of the ravine. He wanted to dig it at the cave if possible, but with their limited toolset, it was next to impossible to bore through rock. Thus, he interred their star forces knapsacks. Leifier's military uniform and Jinto's jumpsuit joined the pile to be buried. Then, finally, I should bury that thing, too. Jinto reached his hand. You can't. Leifier clutched her circlet to her chest. Why not? It's military issue. You can get it replaced 1,000 times over later. This is the first circlet I was ever supplied with upon entry into the military. It's a keepsake to me. Then we'll just dig it back up at some point. It's a circlet, it won't rust or something. That's true, but it might also prove useful. For example? I can't think of one. But Leifier was not budging. If you ask me, we shouldn't be in possession of anything that'd give us away. We'll be carrying guns and our CompuWatches. What's a circlet compared to them? Guess you've got a point there. Jinto used the fork, small shovel, to pile soil on the rest of the discarded items, and then he used his hands to pile soil on the shovel itself. Jinto stashed the CompuWatch into his new jumpsuit's pocket, and the phaser into the duffel bag he'd bought at Lune-Biga. Leifier wrapped her sash belt around her thighs and holstered her phaser in it. Her CompuWatch, meanwhile, was attached to her ankle and concealed by her shoes. Finally, the pendant that contained the navigation log was hidden under her one piece. The deed now done, the two could leave for the city. Since it was noon, the road the two walked down wasn't aglow. The path stretched around 100 dag above the fields, curving every so often but continuing straight for the most part. It was already evening according to biological time, but Svogof's sun was baking their passageway as it climbed up to its apex. Jinto was jealous of Leifier's hat, and he was kicking himself for neglecting to buy himself one. On the other hand, he knew how precious their money was. He'd already used around 200 of the 1,500 daith he'd been given to buy all their clothes. Would it last them until rescue arrived? What would they do if they ran out of money? Was there anyone on the planet magnanimous enough to hire people who'd shown up out of nowhere? If that didn't come to pass, well, he always had a phaser, and if he had to, he'd make use of it. Jinto smirked. A royal princess and a noble prince of a kingdom. Thieves. They'd probably be the most esteemed criminals in human history. Their tale would find its way onto the screen or stage for sure. What are you smiling at? Oh, nothing. Jinto reverted his expression. I see you aren't nervous at all. Look who's talking. You were sleeping like a baby. Shut up, I was tired. Whatever you say. Jinto changed the subject. I wonder if we look like brother and sister? I don't believe we do, given that we're not brother and sister. Then we've got a problem. Why? 'Cause I was thinking we oughta pretend to be siblings when in town. Why must we lie so? What are we gonna do, tell them the truth? Speaking of which, what exactly was the truth of their relationship? Was he a sworn knight of a royal princess? She may have been a genuine princess, but he was no knight. Were they a pair of downtrodden refugees? Now that was getting closer to reality. He'd take that over a trainee star pilot and her human cargo. Again with the strange remarks. Our relationship is a strictly private concern. Hey, I agree with you, but some nosy folks might ask. On Delptu, if an underage boy and an underage girl were to stay at a hotel or whatever, the crime prevention division would jump in. I don't know about you, but I am not a child. I'm not a kid either, but others will think we are. Teal Clint's face bubbled up in his head. It's like how whenever somebody tells whoever raised them, I'm not a kid anymore, they always say, that's just what a kid would say. Granted, when Teal said it, it had been true. Jinto had been so young, so innocent, so clueless. But this isn't Delk 2. No, it's not, but we don't know what it's like here. If Clasbulian culture didn't look down on marrying young, they had nothing to fret over. They could pretend to be a young newlywed couple, though they were poorly dressed for a honeymoon. Is it that important? We want to attract as little attention as possible. To be as normal as Jinto. Leifir suddenly stopped. Am I getting in your way? Jinto was nigh lost for words. What are you on about all of a sudden? If you weren't saddled with me, you would be able to stay hidden much easier, right? Look, Jinto dropped his duffel bag and massaged his brow. He contemplated how best to explain this, and decided in the end to just be forthright with her. I'll give it to you straight. It'd probably be easier for me alone in some ways. After all is said and done, I'm a lander. You are of. Or as being off to your dissatisfaction. Maybe. I do think of it as a bit of a burden. But it's not like I hate it. It's just that if somebody asked me, am I of or a lander, I'd answer the latter. I was born and raised on land. I never realized you thought that way. Leifir bit her lip. Do not worry about me. Nor the Empire. If you don't mind renouncing your noble rank, then let's part ways here. I've told you once before, I don't want to be a burden on you. Are you serious, Leifir? I am. I'd be fine without you anyway. Where do I start? Said Jinto. He found his voice had gotten tight too. I'd be more than fine with renouncing my noble rank, but I have no intention of parting ways with you here. Why not? Because if I did that in order to survive, I'd be miserable, that's why. Jinto vented his spleen as the rage mounted. You don't want to be a burden? But you'd be fine without me? Which is it, Leifir? How's somebody who's a burden on somebody else gonna hack it alone, huh? Listen, you brought me here, and I'm thankful. I can't pilot a spaceship. I needed you. Everyone's got their strengths, right? You aren't used to living on a terrestrial world. Well, not that I'm worldly or sophisticated, but at the very least, I know more than you do. As long as we're using our individual strengths to help each other, why have you got to be so fixated on being a burden? Tell me I'm wrong, Leifir. Am I saying a bunch of nonsense? Or maybe I'm the one you think's a burden. If that's the case, there's no helping it, then you can leave your pathetic cargo and get. I'll let you walk away. But I don't plan on being the one that breaks us up. As Jinto spoke, a hovercover whisked by. You're right, said Leifir, her eyes downcast. Forgive me, Jinto. You are a man of great pride. I am at that, said Jinto, his ire not yet dissipated. I don't honestly know if I'm Ov or a lander, but what I do know is I've got pride. Fancy that, the Ov don't have a monopoly on it. So would you stop coming out with that twaddle? I will not leave your side until it's all safe out there. It was only much later that Jinto would come to realize that when Leifir called him a man of great pride, it was the highest of praise. Okay, I won't ever say it again, Leifir vowed. Jinto's heart finally died down. I needed you, and I'll probably be needing you again. So right now, I'd like you to at least pretend to yourself that you need me at the moment. No need to pretend. Hearing that, Jinto thought to himself that maybe being an of noble wasn't as awful as he'd made it out to be. Yo ho ho, you too. There, he did repeat. Words he picked up in pieces. Is there a fight, boy plus girl? Girl, there, mourn. Girl, there, good, ditch. Boy, looks like, shrip, so come, together, us. Good time, peek, together, us. Jinto turned to look at the source of the voice that had suddenly accosted them. The hovercar that had passed by before had doubled back, stopping right by them. It was roofless. 3 young men were craning forward and jeering something or other. They seemed about the same age, slightly older than Jinto. Jinto switched his brain from standard Barony mode to Clasbulian accented dialect mode, but the men's speech was not only a bit too fast, but also peppered with slang, so he understood maybe half of what was said. He'd vaguely catoned onto how they were mocking them and extending Leifir a crude invitation. What are these men saying? Asked Leifir blankly. Nothing you need to hear, said Jinto, slinging his bag back up off the ground onto a shoulder. Come on, let's get a move on. Okay. And so they started walking as though the men weren't there. Girl, there, mourn. Boy, there, in the way, keep out. Chic, repeat, good, peek. Good, stay, mourn, girl. The hovercar was riding along at their walking speed. As for the next thing the men growled, Jinto understood it perfectly. Don't you ignore us, prick. The bulkiest of the three young men nimbly jumped down off the car and blocked their way forward. Phew, Morn, he whistled and laid his hands on Leifier. Come, let's have some fun. No, stop it. Jinto jumped at the arms manhandling her. Zip it. He thrust Jinto away. Pitifully, that one blow was all it took to knock Jinto off balance and send him rolling down the road back down to the fields. Arg. Jinto took out the phaser from out of his bag. Meanwhile, the man slid down toward the fields after him, charging with his nostrils flared like an ox. Jinto pulled the trigger. He'd lost his cool not because he'd been pushed, but because they were trying to harm Leifier. His rage was a frenzied rage. He couldn't care less if they died. The beam that the phaser fired hit its mark, his aggressor's abdomen, with a flashlight. The man stopped momentarily, but when he realized that it was nothing more than a stronger-than-normal flashlight, his lips curled with contempt, and he resumed charging. Panicking and flustered, Jinto tried switching the gun from Acertam, illumination, mode to ultim, shooting mode, but couldn't make it in time. The man was nearly on him, and reaching to rip the gun from his hand, but all of a sudden, he collapsed. Ow, he wailed, clutching his left leg as he writhed. It was her. She'd put a hole in the man's leg with her phaser. In the eyes of Jinto, who'd finally managed to switch it to shooting mode and get back up on his feet, it was as though Leifier had been pulled back away from him. Since the man who'd attacked him seemed busy with his squirming, Jinto rushed back up the slope. One of the men had Leifier locked in a full Nelson, and the other was trying to pry the gun. Leifier's fighting style was truly striking. She was utterly expressionless, as if to say she didn't care to so much as lift a single mouth muscle for these losers. She was a silent storm, never raising her voice once as she kicked off her would-be captors. The men looked totally confused. They thought the girl would yelp, scream, shriek. Yet things were still looking bad for her. Let her go. Jinto pointed his gun up to the sky for a warning shot. Sadly, his phaser didn't make a sound. If they'd been shrouded in mist or smoke, a bright shaft of light would have caught their attention, but in this brilliant light of day, it was barely visible at all. Jinto aimed it downward. The concentrated light carved the road and instantly sublimated the pavement, triggering a small explosion. Now that caused the two men to freeze. Put your hands up, he shouted in Klasbulian Varanu. Jinto and Leifier then stood side by side, each pointing a gun at one of the men. Don't shoot, Leifier, he whispered. Of course not, she said, shocked. I don't plan on shooting non-resistors. Good, I'm relieved. Part of me would rather like them to start trying to resist, though, said Leifier. Yeah, no, I totally do too. Perhaps Leifier's sentiments had come across, for the men didn't budge an inch, their hands still raised high. All righty, boys, said Jinto. Your friend down there's aching something fierce. Wanna bring him up here for me? The two glared at him, but showed no signs of resistance and went down toward the fields. You are quite adaptable. You can already speak this world's language, asked Leifier. There was a trick to it. It's actually derived from Barnu. Jinto then addressed the men. I don't mind if you make a sudden move. I've been wanting to get in some target practice. Shikuna, swore one of them. Ah shucks, said Jinto. Thanks. What did he say? Asked Leifier. Hell if I know. Probably nothing you'd ever say in front of a blushing maiden, he shrugged. That aside, let's jack their ride. It'd be nice to secure a mode of transport. So we commandeer it? No, said Jinto, steeling his face. We aren't soldiers. We're not commandeering it. We're stealing it. Dispensing all pretense, I see. Right. We'll be criminals from here on out. Their actions and appearance made it clear the trio was a bad lot, and judging by how they'd come at them with their bare hands, he could tell there was no culture of carrying weapons on the streets here. So long as they were toting and using phasers, they couldn't claim to be blameless victims with any persuasive power. As such, they were better off playing consummate criminals, but he'd been afraid the royal princess would poo-poo the idea. Sounds interesting. Surprisingly, she was down. So we're not like the robbers I hear tell of? Yeah, I guess. Jinto had a bad feeling about this. The three hooligans had come up to the path. One of them lent a shoulder to his mate. He'd stopped screaming, but his face was still contorted in pain. Before Jinto could even open his mouth, Leifier made sure to impress upon them in the Baranu she learned in the royal court that they were most assuredly roving bandits, and not the least bit shady like an OV or a Star Forces soldier might be. She further decreed that though they would be taking the car, this act made the utmost economic sense in light of their being bandits, as mentioned before. The men waited out her harangue with expressions of resignation. Jinto was perplexed, to say the least. They may not have understood what Leifier said, but they must have realized it was standard Baranu. He could only assume they'd been given away. If you've CompuWatches or anything else you can use to contact somebody, take 'em all out, would you? Jinto demanded, pulling himself together. The trio didn't react. They just glanced at each other. Come on, look at things from our perspective, said Jinto gently. Leifier had a suggestion. If you're afraid we'll use them on you, then would you prefer we kill you first? Jinto didn't know how much they understood of her Baranu. Judging by how quick they were to finally react to his demands, they definitely picked up on the word game. Kill, though. The men took off the boxes they had strapped to their waists and shoulders and emptied their contents onto the road. That was one effective bluff, he whispered. Leifier stared at him in puzzlement. Her expression innocent. As if to say, what bluff? Jinto shuddered. He moved his gaze off Leifier onto the hooligans. You guys ought to be groveling at my feet in thanks. He issued an order to the one among them who had his hands free. Gather them all together. The young man did as he was told, and Jinto scrupulously blasted the pile of communications devices with his phaser. His aim had been a tiny bit off, but the sensitive equipment was instantly reduced to charred debris. Now then, Jinto peered into the driver's seat of the hovercar. This thingy with the two poles sticking out had to have been the rudder. The foot pedal thing adjusted the speed, and there couldn't be much else to it. However, just to be 100% confident, why don't I have em teach me how to drive this? I believe this one was the one driving, said Leifier, pointing at the man who had lent a shoulder to his injured buddy. "'Kay. Hop on in, friend," ordered Jinto, gesturing toward the driver's seat. Leifier camped herself in the seat behind the driver's seat beforehand. Her gun was aimed at him the entire time he was seated at the helm, while Jinto sat beside him. "You too," said Jinto to the others outside the car, pointing toward the direction away from town. "Why don't you head that way?" The man with the injured leg muttered something softly. Jinto brandished his gun. The two started walking, still muttering. "Now it's your time to shine," he told the driver. "As if I'd," the young man moaned, but once the gun at his back was pressed into his head, he became decidedly more compliant. Jinto observed how he was driving and laid question after question on him. It was as dead simple as he'd expected. No need for any particularly difficult technique. It was a magnetic resistance type hovercar. Once the destination was input, the car would drive itself, and it was easy enough to steer by hand anyway. It couldn't hover unless above the track, so any deviation would require releasing the wheels, much like a grounded car, but that too was just a straightforward twiddling of the controls anyway. "Has this thing got some kind of location marker on it?" "Location marker?" "Yeah, the thing that tips off the place in charge of traffic where it is." "Through radio waves," he explained in simple terms. "No, that doesn't exist." "What's this?" Jinto poked at the communications device-looking thing between their two seats. "That's the navigation device. It's not the car that emits the radio waves. The radio waves tell us where we are." "Gotcha. Show me." The man showed him. A map appeared on screen. The blue dot was probably their position. Jinto fiddled with it a bit. It was child's play to change the scope of the map, as well as to drum up information on the distance to the nearest town, and even open guides on all the major cities. Sweet. That'll come in handy. By the way, are you sure there's no location marker? The traffic control office won't be wanting it. No, there ain't no damn location marker. If they knew where every single car was, they'd have access to people's private lives. That's why there ain't any on this planet. I see, nodded Jinto. Well, that's good for us. Also, what do you mean, on this planet? You don't think we're from around here? What? You mean you are? Come on, don't make the lady in back feel bad. Not after all that effort she put into explaining our shtick. Fine, you're descendants of this Shikuna planet's first settlers for all I care. If you could tell everyone that, that'd be great, thanks, said Jinto, not expecting he'd actually do so. Okay, we're done with you. Come back. The car returned to him. Jinto saw the other two approaching from ahead. Freeze, he ordered. Startled, they halted in their tracks. They probably hadn't reckoned Jinto and the others would double back. Hey guys, you sure you aren't going the wrong direction? He addressed them in cheerful tones. We go where we want, barked the one whose leg got shot. I'll give your petition of grievances some serious consideration, Jinto replied solemnly. Kindly forward your papers to the proper judiciary body. Then Jinto motioned for the man in the driver's seat to leave. Jinto moved sideways to replace him in that seat. Suddenly, their sad financial state crossed his mind. Hey, pals, you got any cash on you? Mind emptying those pockets for me? Don't push your luck, you prick, seethed the man who'd been shot. I could always just pick your corpse clean, you know, he said, giving him his best evil smile. Damn it. The three whipped out all their cash. It added up to a little more than 100 dieth, less than he was hoping. Jinto forced the man who'd been driving to collect it for him, and he swiped it from him. All the while, Leifier had her gun trained on him from the back seat. Now, I hate to have to part ways with you gents, but such is life, said Jinto, and they were off. Leifier climbed up over the back of the chair in front of her and took her place beside him. I'm impressed, she said, almost squeaking. Of course, as robbers we would be taking their money too. I hadn't thought of that. Have you ever robbed someone before? I hope you're kidding. I'm an amateur robber. Back during his days on Delptu, Jinto had envied the older kids who went on joy rides with girls in the passenger seats of their grounded cars. He'd always wanted to try that for himself. Now, apart from its being a hover car instead, that dream had come true. Not only that, but he had one of the most superfine girls in the galaxy beside him. A superfine girl eyeing him with awe. So why was he feeling so depressed?